Hey, good afternoon. We appreciate you being here. We know we had some stiff competition and it's tough to find. I guess because we had a little bit of extra time because one of the panelists couldn't make it, I'm going to start a little earlier and a little broader on the issue of IP monetization, and starting with the fact that before you can really think about monetizing, you need to get your arms around it and manage it. So that was the problem we addressed. I'll start a little bit with just a couple of slides about why it is all important. I'll be preaching to the converted, so we'll go through those quickly because I didn't have time to take them out. And then we'll look at the major challenges to managing innovation and how they can be overcome, and then how that in turn can lead to the monetization, the effective monetization of innovation. So let's just start with the ones that we'll skip fairly quickly. Just two slides on why IP is important. As I say, you know why it's important. First of all, everything that we become as individuals, organizations, and nations depends on the quality of our ideas and our ability to realize them. Maybe you can say that's the philosophical perspective. Then from the economic perspective, 78% of organizational value, and there's varying numbers that, but they're all fairly close to that. So it is the major part of our economy. If we take that globally, that represents about $50 trillion worth of value. And everyone says, yes, but that's already counted. It's in our financials. It's already accounted for. But it's actually not. In fact, we barely talk about it. Most organizations don't do anything about it. The economists did a study and they found that only 5% of companies say they have any kind of tool for managing innovation within their enterprise. So that leads to the question, well, how do we do if we're not managing it? And the answer is, not very well. Now I compiled a few, there's not a lot of data in this area. I like to think of innovation as an industry. So in the innovation industry, it's an industry with almost no data and no statistics. But I culled together some and thought we'd try and look at them to get a sense of how well we're doing. First of all, and this is pretty consistent over about 3 different studies focused in academia, corporations, and government, and pretty much consistent numbers, somewhere between 1% and 2% of the IP in each of those areas ever gets to be licensed, ever gets to really be actively engaged in the economy. Now, under the accounting rules, we're all supposed to be identifying, valuing, and reporting our intellectual assets. So it was interesting to see how we did there. And the answer is, again, not very well. Less than 6% of our intellectual assets are actually ever identified, valued, and reported as required by IFRS 3, FASB 141, 142, etc. And that's a shame, because if we did identify, value, and report our intangibles, one would be actually compliant with the accounting rules. Most firms are not. And secondly, our balance sheets would look a lot better, and our cost of capital would go down. But the number is actually, the average is 6%. Only 6% of the items we're supposed to be identifying, valuing, and reporting actually do get identified, valued, and reported. So we can do better there. And then another number that's perhaps even scarier is about 4% of these assets are being stolen every year. So just to pause for a moment, it's interesting to note that we're having twice as much stolen as we're actually getting licensed. So I think that points to a problem, and we'll come back to that one briefly as well. And then finally, one other interesting data point came from Lord Sainsbury, who was the UK Minister of Innovation. And it's nice, by the way, to pause and think that there are now ministers of innovation. Innovation is recognized as being important enough that it's moved up to a cabinet post. I think I did a count, and I think I found about 14 countries that have a Minister of Innovation. But Lord Sainsbury was the one for the UK. And he came up with the data point that of all the R&D that takes place in the world, about 30% of it is totally wasted reinventing what's already been invented and discovered somewhere else. So if we could prevent that happening, given a global spend on R&D of about $1 trillion, a little bit over $1 trillion a year, that means we'd be saving about $300 billion every year that we're just wasting at the moment. So the answer is not very well. And basically, taken in all, this $50 trillion worth of intellectual assets that we were bragging about a couple of slides ago is actually just sitting there like a giant lump of lard in the global economy doing virtually nothing. So can we do better? Why is it so difficult to monetize our IP? Yeah, the topic, the theme of this session. Well, a few years back I started thinking about that and talked to a lot of people, a lot of IP lawyers, a lot of tech transfer people, a lot of inventors, and basically came up with a list of what I felt was the major issues. Two major ones right at the top of it. Firstly, there is no innovation-based ERP. We have ERPs that are based on our physical, financial, and human assets, but nothing based on our innovation assets. We don't really manage it, as the economist determined a few slides earlier. And there's little trust. We don't share our intellectual assets with others. We don't do a very good job of it. So let's start with the second one. And this is basically what we call the innovation paradox. We come up with ideas, and we know we should be networking, we should be collaborating, we should talk to others, we should share. It should be one wonderful community of innovative people working together. But the reality is, we all go away, we keep it secret, because we're desperately trying to prevent our competitors from getting hold of it. So we keep it away from 2 or 3 competitors, but at the same time we're keeping it away from 200 or 300 potential collaborators, manufacturers, partners, etc. So that's what we've been calling the innovation paradox. We lock them up and no one has access to them. And it's like we have all these islands of innovation that really aren't talking to each other, which is pretty much the way the patent landscape maps look. Now, there's a few other reasons as well, and let's just go through them quickly, because for each problem we identified in how difficult it is for ideas to get from inception to realization. For each problem, there's a solution. General principle of life. For every problem, there's a solution. So we developed a solution for each. In the case of this first one, the enterprise doesn't know what IP it has. And a quick side story, one of my clients was the vice chairman of Chase Bank, and he was saying that he was interested in e-bill payments, thought it was an opportunity for Chase, looked around to see if anyone in Chase was looking at this, and he found 53 different projects, all looking at e-bill payment, all blissfully unaware of each other. And I've heard similar stories from other companies as well. And then he said, and those are the 53 I found, there's probably another 53 I haven't found yet. So for that, there's a capture module. It's like an eLab notebook. Much IP is stolen, as we just discussed. It's stolen by colleagues, competitors, departing employees, and more recently, state-sponsored attackers on a wholesale industrial scale that is unprecedented in the history of mankind. So for that, there's a protect module. Best practices are rarely applied, resulting in unneeded costs and lost revenues. So for that, there's a best practices and manage module. It's difficult to market that which is totally secret, or usually secret, or certainly secret at the beginning of its life cycle. There's a module for that. We'll come back to that. And then licensing IP is expensive and time-consuming. Module for that. IP evolves and combines to create new innovation. This is just the way innovation works. It's not a static thing. It keeps changing. We keep improving it, and then we combine it with other innovation, and we generate symbiotic value in the process. So again, something for that. So I'll look at them in summary, and then we'll just quickly pick just 3 or 4 of them, and then we'll go from there, and we'll see how this leads into the discussion on monetization. So there's really 2 parts to what we would view as solution. First of all, the innovation ERP, looking at all types of innovation over all stages of the life cycle. Sounds like there's a more lively one next door if anyone wants to go. Or is it a wedding? Okay, sorry, I'll do that. I'll bring it up a little bit. Does that help a little bit? Okay, I'm sorry. Thanks for that. So one part is the innovation ERP, all types of innovation throughout the life cycle, all stages of the life cycle for each functional role in the organization. Then secondly, using that, through that, each organization builds their own secure repository of their IP. But then, as we show below, if we can link that together in a way where they can maintain their confidentiality and sometimes even their anonymity, then we can build a secure, trusted community of innovators where it's much easier for them to collaborate and share, and they're not getting their ideas stolen all the time. Now, I wrote a book on the topic, and that was what got me kind of involved because it got some good reviews, Carl Icahn and Lee Iacocca. So it seemed that there was a need and there was some level of agreement. So I quit my job and started trying to build it. And my girlfriend never forgave me. We'll pass by this quickly. You know, for each innovation, there's 6 essential items that you have to capture: the who, why, when, where, and how. So that's captured with every innovation as it's registered, and it's registered in what's effectively an e-lab notebook, just the same as the physical lab notebooks we write down and put in the desk drawer. It's an e-lab notebook that captures all your ideas as you think of them, and secures them and stores them in a very secure area, and then cryptographic hashing algorithms are run through it, which are time-stamped with a server calibrated to the atomic clock. So there's a very strong, you know, we could spend a long time going into the detail, but basically there's a very strong, irrefutable attestation trail as to who thought of it and when. And obviously that's important for many reasons, including the post-grant review. Then a module to protect it. 2 parts really, what's the idea, what problem does it solve, and then how do we solve it, the proprietary part. You can set the access levels differently, ranging in the hierarchy from just the inventor, the department, the business unit, organization, anyone who's signed an NDA, no matter where they are, or the general public. And then the proprietary content you typically lock down more, and then you can specifically exclude people. So your competitors, for instance, you can list all of them, and they'll never have access to anything, either the proprietary or even the market abstract side. And by the way, all of that the clients store on their own servers if they want, but they can store in a cloud-based server which is highly secure using an impenetrable security that has not been broken to date, despite many open invitations to hackers and hackathons inviting them to break in. Onto value, that's the other challenge, particularly when it comes to monetizing IP. And you know, we've had quite a few experts talk on that. There's many different views on the different metrics, and ultimately we view it as a big data problem. You need to do multivariate regressions against known data points so you can get weighting factors for different versions. Let's look at best practices briefly. At the moment, there's largely none. You know, there's one decision, do we patent it or not, and then it sits there for the rest of its life, regardless of whether it's useful or not. A gentleman this morning came up with several matrices. This is another one. Protectability and marketability. If it's something that you can protect and it's in your core area, then typically you would develop that in-house. If it's something that you can protect but it's not in your core area, you look for a joint venture partner. If it's something you can neither protect nor market, you might as well donate it, get the tax deduction for what you've spent on it so far. And if it's something that you don't think you can protect but it is important for your business, you publish it so that you have the freedom to operate. And then whichever you do, the system can automatically implement it because there's a legal infrastructure underneath it. So by checking the box for instance, donate, then it will automatically transfer it to a non-profit corporation in the quarter that you want, generate a valuation, send it to the CFO, and they can use that to get the tax deduction. Or if it's being moved to the IP holding company, that can be done automatically as well. And then funding. We could talk forever on this one, and I'll be happy to, but we shouldn't do it now. There's several different approaches. Crowdsourcing is an interesting opportunity because it really doesn't contravene the 1933 Securities Act. I think there's also a lot of role for setting up funds. Some people are starting to do some of these. I'm really interested in the interface between the financial services industry and it does sound much more exciting over there. The interface between the financial services industry and the innovation industry. Yeah, they're cheering for us. The other thing we'll just touch upon very quickly. How are we doing on time? Okay. Is and we're particularly interested in the problems for the small and medium-sized enterprises because in a way they're disadvantaged. These are the companies we're looking to for future jobs, and they're really having a tough time right now. So one issue that's a concern for them is the challenge if they have a patent, they used to then sit back and relax. Now, of course, if you're infringed by a larger company, if you don't have the 2 or 5 million sitting around to assert your IP, there's not much you can do about it. A colleague on this project was a Euro MP and was asked to look at the whole problem of the absence of broadly available patent litigation insurance. He wrote 2 70-page reports for the European Commission, and we used the data from that to work with insurers to find a plan that can be used. So for a fairly modest sum, an inventor can actually insure their patents so that if it is infringed, they have the wherewithal to assert it. Again, that's a longer conversation that we can put off for now, but I just wanted to mention it. And then let's come to the crux issue in a way, back to the innovation paradox of how do we market something that for much of its life is secret. If we wait until it's an issued or granted patent, we often have quite a long wait. And with the short technology cycles, we're wasting a lot of time. So let's find a way if we can get the communication going even before. And what we do is you saw the earlier slide where we talked about protecting it and how we structure all that. That's interesting. But a lot of people just lock it all down and keep everything confidential. So we set it up so they have one minor concession to open innovation. They can simply check a box and it will allow a proprietary scan of even their proprietary data, but it's kept completely confidential. What it's used for is if there's someone else looking for that technology, wanting to license that kind of technology, it will show up on their system as a section called New in Your Interest Area. Also sends them an email. And it shows, all it tells them is the keyword that triggered the hit. And they can click on that keyword, and through that they can, because at the moment they don't know what it is or who has it, but they can click on that keyword and send a message to the owner of that IP, and then gradually start a conversation. When they realize they're not competitors, they can be working together, and it starts that conversation. So the idea is that everything that's been kept secret, now we want to at least enable people to connect and find the people who aren't competitive that they can be working with. And on our modest little trial of just 15 people, that actually occurred. We didn't expect it to occur. We thought we'd have to have hundreds of people before we started getting symbiosis like that. But we actually found 2 items where that happened. One was a company that made UAVs, micro UAVs, and they wanted to apply for a Department of Defense grant for detecting bacterial pathogens in a biological warfare situation. And they didn't know, they knew about UAVs, but they knew nothing about detecting pathogens. So they put that in as their keyword, and by coincidence, 2 weeks later, another one of our beta customers, a company called BioVigilant that made detectors for bacteria and bacterial pathogens, entered their invention. And they kept it completely confidential, but they made that one concession to open innovation. It popped up on the screen of the UAV manufacturer. They clicked. The request was sent. The biovigilant people said, yep, looks like they're not competitors. Let's go ahead and do that. Generated a license on the module we'll see in just a moment, and over it went. And they worked together. In fact, then the other one was a company that destroys nosocomial infections in hospital rooms, for instance. And they wanted to know when to turn their machine off, because you want to be using the hospital room as quickly as possible, and you couldn't use it when it was doing its stuff. So they teamed up with them so they could find out when they'd reduce the bacterial load in that room to almost zero, then they turn off their machine. So it was interesting that in just a small group of 15 companies, there was 2 areas where 2 different innovations came together to create additional value out of nothing, because the cost for both of those innovations was already there. It was just simply a matter of putting them together. If we can do that on a global scale, we can be creating enormous amounts of value. So we're not just looking at taking that $50 trillion and making it more liquid, we're also looking at creating additional symbiotic value by connecting it together in an interesting way. So this is just describing that process, the keywords, the hit, clicking on the hit, and sending the message on the right-hand side of the screen. So basically through this, that kind of fortuitous combination of ideas, which used to just happen when people meet in the corridors of the laboratory or at conferences like this, we don't have to wait for serendipity anymore. We can actually encourage it to happen almost instantly. As soon as there's an interesting match out there between one person in the world and someone else, it can happen. Now, we mentioned licensing earlier. That takes a long time, often a month. Actually, I saw a statistic, I think, that it takes 3 months on average to generate a simple license. So we thought, let's speed it up a little bit. So we read about 200 licenses, got all the superset of all the terms, and then it's now parameterized. You enter the information, and in it goes. Useful, quick, but also interesting from the client's point of view, because now that can be used to start building an econometric model of innovation within the enterprise. We've now identified the innovation itself, and now we can keep track of all the interconnections between that innovation within the enterprise and with other enterprises. And with this information, we can build an econometric model, which greatly improves our understanding of what's going on in terms of innovation. It also, incidentally, gives us what's largely been absent, and that's interesting information about average royalty rates and this kind of thing. So we've got 2 people coming together, back to the mic, the UAV people and the biovigilant people. They say, okay, let's go ahead and apply for this DoD grant. Normally they say, well, maybe we'll create a joint venture company to do this. Why bother? You're just going to have all these government forms to fill in, the tax forms, the franchise tax, the property tax, and everything else. Just form a virtual company. So we allow you to create a virtual company that can be the vehicle for this test innovation, and it can start its own life. At some point, if they want to make a real company, they can. But generally, the longer you can put that off, the better, unless you're working for the government, in which case you want all the extra bureaucracy you can get. So we use this ability to combine in several ways. We use it to create the virtual company. We use it to create new innovation, because basically when 2 ideas come together, it creates a new innovation. And that one, it's like an object-oriented system. It then starts its life again as a new innovation that again goes through the life cycle. So we have innovation coming together, combining, and going through its life cycle, and all the time tracking it with an econometric model that's being built. And then, of course, reports. Reports, whether it's invention disclosures or here we have an exit report where someone leaves the enterprise. It shows everything that they invented while they're at the organization. Yes, I did that while I worked for you. It belongs to you. And then everything that every trade secret they access when they're at the corporation. Yes, that's confidential. I'll keep it confidential. Sign that one. They get their final check and they're off. Could have saved that problem that Intel had with the $1 billion lawsuit about the junior engineer who who walked off with, in their view, $1 billion worth of microchip designs. Why he had access to the microchip designs when he'd already told them he was leaving and going to AMD is another story, and we solved that one in the first, that earlier Protect module. And here's a quick overview of the econometric model. The hexagons are the innovations and the lines are the licenses. I need to make the lines thicker. So we just talked about 10 modules, I think, so far. There's about 18 others, but it's a hot room, so I don't want to send you to sleep. And there's other people to talk soon. So that was just to give you a sense of it. We brought these together, along with the 18 other, in what we call the Innovation Manager, which has everything from the capturing IP, outsourcing IP if you're looking at from others. Basically, the outsource module is a combination of an innovation that doesn't yet exist with a license that has a licensee but no licensor. Again, it's all object-oriented to keep it as simple as possible, because we know it's going to get complex. We're trying to keep it simple. And this may look intimidating and difficult, but the reality is, one, the complexity is already subsumed into the software, which is already written and tested. And two, most users only use one or two modules. Research scientists may just use the capture module, or maybe the protect module. The CFO will be using something else. It's simple for the individual user. But it does go right through the life cycle, deals with all the other issues, workflows, etc., right through to the far right-hand side there, where you combine them, and they just start at the beginning and go right the way through again as a new combined innovation. So talking again about the ERP aspect of it, we had ERPs for the physical assets like SAP. We had ones started off with the human assets like PeopleSoft. Oracle handled the financial assets, but for intangible assets up to now, there really has been nothing that's comprehensive, managing every aspect of innovation from the very beginning to the very end. Now, having done this, we thought, let's give it away. Let's give it to any organization who wants it. They can put their own name on it. They white label it. So, for instance, a law firm, I don't know if we have any IP lawyers in the room, but they could take that for their law firm, under their white label, give it to all their clients, and they're building their own innovation ecosystem, which does a couple of things. One, it changes their relationship with the clients from the tactical to the strategic. Instead of just waiting for them to bring a patent in to get it prosecuted, they now have a view, if the client gives it to them, because people only have a view if they're given it. We, for instance, can't see anything unless a client gives us permission to see it. We can't see the data in the system. But if the clients give you the permission, obviously they normally would, then you now have an overview of innovation throughout the whole enterprise. And for a